Hi, everyone. Welcome to the May 2021 meeting of the Humanist Society of Santa Barbara. I'm Judy Flattery. I'm the president of the society, and I'm really glad to see everyone here today. So today, we're very fortunate to have Hank Pellissier here, who is the director of Humanist Global Charity, as our speaker. From time to time, I would get emails from this group, and I was always curious. Who are they? What do they do? They would give a list of interesting projects, but I really wanted to know more about who they are, what they do. So I responded to one of those and said, hey, would you come talk to our group? And Hank jumped at the chance. A little background on Hank. He's a writer, editor, speaker, producer, and director of this nonprofit involved with transhumanist, atheist, educational, and humanitarian causes. Co-produced an atheist film festival in San Francisco, I missed that one, and was a columnist for the New York Times, a column called Local Intelligence. His former charity, Brighter Brains Institute, is now called Humanist Global Charity, and it built an atheist orphanage in Uganda in 2015. I liked what I saw about their vision. We work towards a world with humanist values that respects science, secular education, sustainability, kindness, and democracy. The charity provided over $100,000 in humanitarian aid in 2019 to secular humanists in India and Sub-Sharan Africa. It offers internships in Africa development, India development, and wealth redistribution. And this has sounded interesting. Pellissier's recent project, Egalitarian Planet, demonstrates his interest in global egalitarianism. So with that, Hank, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Well, thanks for having me here, everybody. I always enjoy Santa Barbara because I went to UC Santa Barbara, and it's always fun getting back there and thinking about it. This is just showing you some members of our board of directors. We're kind of showing them off now because they just joined. We got Stephen Pinker to join our board, and that's Daniel Dennett. The president of our board of directors is Karen Zelevinsky, who's a wonderful friend of mine who lives in Massachusetts. And in the lower right is Phil Zuckerman, who just became our executive director about a month ago. And my official title now is program director, but I'm also the secretary, treasurer, and founder. We're just going to kind of start at the beginning. This picture was taken back in 2014. I was looking for something. I had started a nonprofit that was I kind of started a nonprofit that was looking for something good and interesting to do, and I just happened to find out online that there was a man in Uganda who had started in a humanist school. So kind of on a spur of the moment thing, I decided to fly out and meet him. And his name is Bwambale Robert Musabaho. He's in Western Uganda, and he's been our primary partner for 7 or 8 years now. He's an orphan himself. And he's actually one of the smartest people I've ever met, and he now runs 4 different schools for us. So these are the humanist school values. These are actually from a book called Global Ethics, written by a Canadian named, I think his name is Ronald Tremblay, and he didn't even know it. I had to tell him, did you know that in Africa they've adopted your humanist values? And he's like, I didn't know that. But anyway, here they are, and there's 10 of them, and only one of them really has to do with religion, and it's number 6 that says no superstition. And this is actually kind of interesting because when we started, and still to quite a large extent, our primary opponents there are not actually Christians or Islam, but it's actually witch doctors, traditional African medicine. So there's still witchcraft in large parts of Africa, and so when we started, we were actually trying to do things like getting people to stop throwing albinos into volcanoes, just like this stuff that I didn't even think was happening. And we did lose one orphan. An orphan was, one of our orphans at our orphanage was actually killed and his genitals cut out and sold to like a builder in the capital of Uganda. So a lot of what we started off doing was actually, the religion we were opposing was actually traditional African witchcraft religion. So this is kind of what we started promoting. These are two kids from a village called Nyaka Yambu in Western Uganda. So we, you know, humanism tells us that we live on earth by our own, not by God. That's very much what our message is. It's kind of complicated explaining humanism actually to some Africans, especially, you know, like a village where everybody is kind of pre-literate. They don't actually read, and so, but this is, so we give them very simple, easy to understand ideas about what we mean by our humanism. Okay, these are orphan girls in Uganda. I'm just going to start talking about Uganda a lot because that's the nation we've been in the longest. And this is just a project that we had. We found a local tailor who made these dresses for $15 each, and we gave these dresses for free to orphans there. I would get $15 donations online, and that was enough to buy a dress for an orphan girl, and plus it paid the tailor there. It was a popular project. I mentioned some books. We've put out 9 different books. Let's see. Starting at the upper left, Why We Left Religion, Testimonies by Ex-Believers. That's probably my favorite book. I just interviewed a whole lot of people to find out why they became humanists, why they left their religion. That's a free book. Leo Igwe, you might have heard of. He's a leading Nigerian humanist. The book on the upper right is written by Bombali Robert Musubaho. He's my Ugandan friend. The book on the lower left, Critical Thinking, we offered 43 different critical thinking workshops in Africa. So that's a compilation of some of the most interesting critical thinking workshops we did. They're all about trying to counteract superstitions. Like, you don't have to give, you know, 5 chickens every year to the witch doctor to make it rain. You don't have to do that.
I have to comment though, the Why We Left Religion, it says edited by Mubarak Bala, who we've been following him. Interesting.
Yeah. You know, I was probably,
I mean, we know he's in jail. He's still in jail. It's been a year because of a Facebook post. And every now and then when we hear news, we share it with our group here.
Yeah, we'll talk about him quite a bit. But I was probably, you know, a daily correspondent with him for about a year and a half. I think I counted up 400 emails from him. And he was, you know, he was my primary partner there for about a year. Yeah, and so we worked on that book, and a lot of that book is focused on Nigerian ex-Muslims, which is a huge topic. Okay, here's our, we actually offer internships. We've had 5 different internships. So sometimes I have our interns put out books. So the first book is on wealth redistribution. That's a really great book. I had a lot of really smart interns in there. The book on the far right, Mama Yewa, that's written by a Nigerian ex-Muslim, and that's, you know, because that's an ongoing thing. Mubarak Bala has now been in jail for a year, and that's a really unsettled area. And the book in the middle, Global Peace Strategy, that just came out a week ago. That's a compilation of essays. Sometimes I just put out these ebooks to give people that we know around the world a chance to express themselves. I pay them like $10 or $20 an essay, and we get their opinions. Most of Global Peace Strategy is ideas for peace in Africa, which is actually, there's a lot of wars going on in Africa that most people never even know about. Okay, this is back in late 2014 when I was talking to Bombali Robert Musubaha. I was very aware there was a comment online that I took offense to. It was probably on Reddit, and these Christians and atheists were arguing, and the Christians were taunting the atheists, saying, what good have atheists ever done? Have you ever heard of an atheist orphanage? Of course not. Ha ha ha. So I approached Bombali Robert and said, why don't we start the world's first atheist orphanage? And he agreed to do that. And these are the girls in the world's first atheist orphanage, which is in Western Uganda. We built a whole school around that first atheist orphanage. It's called Bazoha, and I think it has about 200 kids in it now. And this is a tractor. This is a tractor that we bought. This is a $7,000 tractor. And Bombali Robert Nusabaha is an extremely smart businessman, actually. So every time we start a school with him, he buys acres, you know, he buys like usually about 5, 6, 7 acres around it, and he turns it into farmland. So that's what the tractor's for. The tractor harvests all the crops that are grown around the orphanage. And this way the orphanage or the schools can feed themselves, and also they have produce to help support the school. And we also started a Humanist Center. This is just sort of an office building, and it also serves as a hotel and a conference center for Western Ugandan atheists. And humanism has really taken off in Uganda. When we started, as you know, when we started, there was one humanist school, and now there's probably 10 by now. I mean, we added 2 more just this last month. So humanist schools are definitely starting to appear, and it's now it's a belief system that's known. It's present on college campuses in Uganda, and it's been wonderful for us. We also started 16 clinics. Clinics in they were all associated with schools. The 16 clinics were all in Uganda. They're stocked with medicine that we provided for free. We try to get sponsors. So this is one of our sponsors of our clinic. This is our clinic it's called Kenyenze, and it's sponsored by Atheist Community of San Jose. And the next slide is a little weird. This is our clinic that's sponsored by Alcor. You probably noticed in the introduction that I was introduced as a transhumanist, and I sort of jokingly define transhumanists as the people that want to live forever and are willing to become robots to do that. Anyway, Alcor is the cryogenics institute in Arizona, where people get their heads frozen or their whole bodies frozen, so that they can be reanimated in the future. Anyway, I know those people, and I said, well, you're working really hard to make sure people live forever, and why don't you give us some money so that Ugandans can live to be at least 60, because the average lifespan in Uganda was only, I think, between 55 and 59. It's kind of funny because whenever I go to Uganda, I'm always introduced as a very old man, because in Uganda, I am a very old man. Okay, so this is another school in Uganda. It's called Garama, and this is one of the major things we do. They're all holding sanitary pads. Sanitary pads are a huge deal in the developing world because they cost money, and a lot of girls can't afford to buy them, and so they don't go to school, and so girls' education lags because they don't go to school. As soon as they hit puberty, they take a few days off every month, and they get behind, and then they just drop out. So we've provided thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of sanitary pads in Africa, India, and Nepal by now. This is one of the lesbian LGBT organizations that we have donated funds to. This is in Uganda. It's one of the, I think it's the only one in Uganda that we've funded, but we have also funded a lot of lesbians and gays in Kenya and Nigeria. And this is I live in Piedmont, which is in Northern California, and I got the local high school physics class to make these. These are cell phone rechargers. So the teacher had the kids make a whole bunch of them, and I dragged them off to Uganda. And these are extremely valuable because these people live off the grid. So this is a way they can keep their phones charged and communicate with each other. And over the years, we have gradually evolved into finding something that actually works for us, that works really well for us. And what we do now is the main thing we do is we provide $300 grants for sustainability projects. That's probably the main thing we do. And that means we give a group or sometimes an individual $300 to start up a business so that they can support themselves. And so what this particular group does, this is also in Uganda, is these are orphan boys and they're making sandals out of recycled tires. And that's something that we really like to do. We like to help orphans. We like to help them become sustainable economically. This is this is the African Dignity Women's Foundation, also in Western Uganda, and they got a $300 embroidery project. You're going to see a lot of projects now. This is the Joy Women Group in Uganda, and they got $300 to grow, to have a giant garden. I think, and this is a eco briquette project. What they do is they take vegetable matter and cardboard and stuff like this, and they grind it up and they squish it. Anyway, it keeps them from cutting down trees and from having to buy firewood and having to buy charcoal. They just make these eco briquettes. We've probably done about 4 of these. These are some more orphan boys, and this is a carpentry workshop. So we both bought the tools and we paid for the instructor. So I'm talking a lot about orphans. Western Uganda has a huge amount of orphans. It's on the border with Democratic Republic of Congo. There's a lot of militias in the Eastern Congo, which is right across the border. Numbers range between like 19 militias and 150 militias. Basically, depends on how you define militia. Basically, just like a warlord or a bandit who's got like a gang of followers armed with machine guns. So there's a lot of encroachment, like these militias coming over into Uganda and raping, killing, stealing, etc. And so anyway, there's like a lot of orphans, like something like 15% of the children in Western Uganda are orphans. And plus, they could also be orphans for any other kinds of reasons. The most disturbing reason I found is that a lot of these boys are orphans because their dad was killed for being a poacher. Western Uganda is full of these lovely national parks, and I don't think I really approve of it at all, but people that go hunting on the national parks are shot and killed by soldiers, by forest rangers. After working in Uganda exclusively for about 3 years, we moved next door to Kenya. And this is, we got associated with a group called Humanist Orphan Center Kenya, and we worked there with Center for Inquiry. And I communicate with them regularly, and we sort of are co-funding this orphanage. There's 30 orphans here. And the first thing we did was we bought them a popsicle machine so they can both enjoy popsicles like they're doing in this photo, or they can sell popsicles for income. And most of the income goes to support their education. And then nearby, this is an orphanage of obviously albinos, children with albinism. And we bought them art supplies. And it's fantastic that we got to work with these kids. They suffer a lot of loneliness and ostracizing in their own communities. So their parents often bring them here, and they get to be together. I'd like to do this project again sometime. Okay, this is another Kenyan project. These are also orphans. This is a cricket farm. It's slightly demanding because we have probably done 150 or 200 projects by now, but I keep trying to find new and different projects just so the funders don't get bored. Sometimes funders will be willing to fund something over and over again, but they prefer to see something new. But anyway, this is a cricket farm, and the crickets are ground up and used as a protein supplement for food. And this is our orchard. We have a fruit orchard. This is back at the Humanist Orphan Center with the 30 orphans. And this is a long-term project that we have to give them, just probably a couple $1,000s a year. It's a fruit orchard. I think it's mangoes, apples, and pears. And this is another sanitary pad project also in Kenya. I'm a trained mediator, and another member of Humanist Global Charity is a trained mediator. So we trained some of the humanists at the Maseno University in Kenya in mediation. We trained them on Zoom, and now they have started a Humanist Peace Service Center there where they're going to be mediating with their fellow classmates. Okay, now we're in Nigeria. Nigeria is possibly the most interesting country we work in, and it's definitely the most volatile and dangerous. The first thing we did there was we offered critical thinking workshops. We kind of had to do it sneaky. We couldn't just go in and say, hey, we're humanists and we're offering critical thinking workshops. We had to leave the humanism out of there because we work almost exclusively in northern Nigeria, which is Muslim. It's Boko Haram territory, and it's dangerous. So this is one of our partners. He's standing up on the right. His name is Abdul Rahman, and he's teaching a critical thinking workshop. See, this is a fairly new thing. In northern Nigeria has been radicalized. 20 years ago, you would not see a classroom with girls in hijab like this, but now they are. And Boko Haram is, kind of out in the countryside near this town. And this is an interesting story here. This is a tragic story. Okay, this little boy. There's a whole group of children in northern Nigeria called the Almajirai. And what these are children, usually boys, who are dropped off by impoverished parents at Islamic centers and mosques. And the parents feel like they can't afford to educate these children or even keep these children, so they just give them to the Islamic centers, and the Islamic centers raise them and educate them. But all they really educate them in is the Quran. So, and their abuse, and quite often the children at these centers, the Almajiri children, are abused in all kinds of horrific ways. This particular boy, he stole a cell phone, and his punishment for stealing the cell phone was he had his hands tied behind his back on a post, and they left him there for 2 days, and he got gangrene, and he had to have his arms amputated at the elbows. So what we did was we raised enough money to get him prosthetic arms. So he now has prosthetic arms, but they kind of got a couple sizes too large, if you ask me. But now he's got arms again. It's kind of darkly amusing that he's actually holding a cell phone. That's what got him in trouble in the first place. But we've raised a lot of money to help these Almajirai kids. Probably a little known fact is that 85% of Boko Haram, the terrorist group, is composed of Almajiri boys who kind of outgrew the madrasas. They sort of outgrew the Islamic centers where they stayed, but they had never learned any vocational skills, and they had never learned anything except fundamental Islam. So they joined Boko Haram. This is one of our favorite projects, and we're still at it. This is like our third or fourth year. The guy in the middle in the blue shirt he's a closeted humanist, of which there are many in northern Nigeria. And what he does for us is he goes into the refugee camps. And the refugee camps are people who have been displaced by Boko Haram. Boko Haram will come into the village and they'll kill the dad. And then the widows with their 4 to 7 children will drift into the refugee camps, which are near the major cities. The particular city that we work in is called Maiduguri. And anyway, so our partner there, what he does is he takes food to the refugee camps. You can see the houses that, I don't know if you call them houses, the huts that they live in these refugee camps. They're really just made out of sticks and tarps. And we provide money to do sustainable projects. We gave money to this group of women, this group of widows, and they bought pasta making equipment. So they have a noodle business. And they make noodles. This is working with the Almajirai again. There's entire Almajiri. They're almost Almajiri villages, like out in the middle of nowhere. There'll be like this Islamic center with 200 boys living in it. And so we had one of our partners go out there, and he gave these kids now have toothbrushes and toothpaste. So they're thanking us. Otherwise, they would have no dental care at all. This is another project. This is a project that we actually did with Mubarak Bala. It was his idea. We're trying to extend. We're trying to stop the Sahara Desert. Just a little project. Ha ha. But northern Nigeria is being encroached on. It's part of the Sahel, which is sort of a in-between zone between tropical Africa and the Sahara Desert. But anyway, so we're planting trees. We're planting fruit trees. That's what this project is. It's hiring Almajirai. These are essentially orphan boys abandoned by their parents. We hire them to plant trees in the Sahel region. And here they are again. And Mubarak Bala, he actually, his first activism was actually trying to help these boys. There's supposed to be a number like 10 million children in northern Nigeria who are Almajirai, which are basically abandoned boys left to fundamentalist Islamic education. Okay, so, and this is the safe house that we started. This was a long project. Mubarak Bala, he's on the far side, the man holding it up in the blue shirt, and his wife is 2 women over, the tall women. That's and what we did was we got them a safe house because he was living in northern Nigeria and saying, you know, my life is threatened all the time. But we got him a safe house. It's very, very inexpensive. I think it's 4 bedrooms near the airport, and we moved about 8 people in. Now we're back up in Maiduguri in northern Nigeria. Our wonderful partner there, the closeted humanist, we got him enough money to start a world peace internet cafe. He's a brilliant man. He's only 24 years old. We've been funding him since he was 21. He's getting a master's degree in environmental planning. But meanwhile, he runs multiple projects for us. And one of them is the World Peace Internet Cafe. Okay, we started an ice cream business. These are all widows. They were widowed by Boko Haram. So he hires them, and they make ice cream and sell ice cream. And it's got that's our logo on that. Oh, this is the last one. These are orphan boys in Nigeria. And we just give them money so that they can stay in school. And now we're in Ghana. And there's a white guy in that picture. He is actually our representative in the UK. His name is Dan Beaton. And he flies to Africa 3 or 4 times a year, unless there's COVID. And he teaches critical thinking workshops. So he's with a bunch of Ghanaian kids in this picture. And I'm only going to show you the main thing we've done in Ghana is we've worked in the witch camps. You may not have heard of witch camps. But witch camps are, they're in northern Ghana, which is an Islamic area. But what happens is older women are also categorized as witches. It's really about economics. They have like a neighbor who says they're witches, and then so they're forced out of the village, and the neighbor gets to take over their house. So there's a lot of witches up there, and the witches have to take their children. And in this particular photo, what we've done is we have taught soap making to children of the witches. I think there's witches in the next picture. yeah, now these are older women. They're all widows. They lost their husbands, and then they were they were like categorized as witches and driven out of their village, and they live in these sort of grim, horrible camps in northern Ghana. So we worked with them for a while. And now, and then we worked in Democratic Republic of the Congo for a while. These are orphan kids in the Congo. We helped them for a while. Let's see. This was an interesting project we did. As you know, the Congo has had violent civil war for like 10 years. And I had a couple of interns that were psychology majors, and they were like, why don't we hire a counselor to work with everybody who has post-traumatic stress? And as a lot of them do. So the man in the pink shirt is a psychologist, and I think we managed to take care of about 22 people. We got him a counseling session, and he prescribed medication for some of them. I think the most common symptom was just depression. I have a psychologist friend here. He actually works at the Veterans Hospital, local, and I had him check the prescription, so we knew that we were prescribing the correct medicine. So that was a project we did in the Congo. And let's see. Oh, so now we're in the Philippines. So we've been working in the Philippines since the very beginning. Actually, as long as we've worked in Uganda, we've been working in the Philippines. So this is a deworming project. There's been studies that say the best thing you can do per dollar is hand out deworming medication to children. So that's what this project is. Let's see. This is slightly quirky. This is a powdered complete meal. This is basically astronaut food. So I sent 80 pounds of it to the Philippines, to this community. These are actually, they're called Mangyang tribal children. So they're I guess they're the equivalent of Native Americans, but they're native Philippine people. Anyway, they're Mangyang children, and these are complete proteins flavored with chocolate. So I think, yeah, here's a kid drinking it. So they're getting all their nutritional value by drinking this food, and it tastes delicious too. Let's see what else we got. We work with a group called HAPPY, Humanist Alliance in the Philippines. We work with them a lot. They're great partners. We try to work with humanist partners around the world. Right now there's 8 countries that we work in regularly. Like every month we try to send $300 to a project to each of these 8 countries. And HAPPY is the group that we work with in the Philippines. This is another indigenous tribe of the Philippines. These are called the Aita people. They were nomadic. They were a hunter-gathering group. And they're no longer allowed to do that, so they have to learn agriculture. And we're helping them. I think for this project, we probably bought them either coconut plants or mango plants, something like that. I think it's avocado. I think there's our partner in the upper right. And she's with the Aita people. You can't actually tell in these photos, but the Aita people are also classified as pygmies. They're shorter. They're like 4'8", full grown. This is our most recent Philippine project. This is in a suburb of Manila, and this is a project where we buy rice in bulk. We buy like 300 pounds of rice, and we give it to single mothers. We give them large amounts of rice, and then they sell it by the kilo, and they make 30% profit. And so we have all kinds of people, economists who just love this project because it's very sustainable. All we got to do is buy bulk rice, they sell it retail, and they can support themselves. Okay, this is the only project we've got going on in Myanmar, and we love this project. We're basically helping a safe house there. This is a battered women's shelter. So these are women who left their partners due to domestic abuse, and they took their children with them. And we help them by giving them food. And we'd love to work more in Myanmar, but it's been kind of cut off. It's hard to reach them now via email. Our goal is to work there regularly. Okay, now we're in India. India, as you know, is a giant country with millions of people, and it's actually a really complicated country religiously. We can find, there's not an enormous amount of humanists there, but we have found one. This guy is a PhD student at sort of a radical university in northern India, and we gave him money to start a rationalist library in his village. And a rationalist is what they actually call humanists in India, more than anything else, called rationalists. He's a wonderful guy. This is a podcaster. This is an atheist podcaster, and he's in a Himalayan province. And we just gave him money to produce some podcasts. Okay, and this is sad. The woman in this picture, her husband, this is down in Tamil Nadu, which is the southernmost province of India. Her husband was a prominent ex-Muslim atheist who was murdered. He was assassinated by Muslim extremists. So we just gave her money for food so that she can take care of herself and her family members. And this is actually a tribe in Rajasthan, India. And these are, this is an interesting tribe. This is sort of an entertainment tribe. They think this tribe is actually the same tribe as, they're related to the Gypsies, to the Roma people of Europe, but they're terribly poor. So we help them out a little bit every year. Okay, now this is like the main thing we're doing in India now. We work with this wonderful woman in Mumbai, and what she does is she tries to take care of poor people in the slums of Mumbai. And Mumbai is an absolutely huge city, and there's some number like 8 million people that live in the slums. So you can see there's more work for us than we could ever possibly do just in there. So this is a self-defense class. We offered a self-defense class, and any girl or boy who took it got like a little food care package. I think that's what the next slide is as well. Yes, now these are boys, and they got a food care package as well. This actually might not be self-defense. There's a whole other caste of people in India that are called the Adavasi, and again, these are tribal people. And we don't hear a lot about them. We hear about untouchables, but there's a group of people in India called the Adavasis. They're tribal people, and their caste is even lower than the untouchables. They're a very impoverished group. Okay, and this is in the slums of Mumbai, and this is again, I think this is just handing out. We gave them all sanitary pads, again, like we do all over the world. Okay, next is these are old people, elderly people who live like on the street in Mumbai. They live on the sidewalk, and we gave them a medical kit. So there's various hygiene and medical things for them. Okay, and now we're in Nepal, and I don't have a lot of slides of Nepal, but Nepal is actually, I think we've given more money to Nepal this year than any other country except Uganda. The first project we did was we simply gave them, because we started in like November or December, we simply gave some poor people, we gave them gas and kerosene just to keep them, just so they would have heat. We gave it to families with single mothers. These are school girls. We give most of our money in Nepal goes for sanitary pads and school supplies for girls. Otherwise, they just, without the sanitary pads and the school supplies, their parents just take them out of school. Nepal is actually really complicated. It's majority Hindu, so it has the same problems that India does, where there's untouchable people. It's a caste system, and there's a lot of prejudice against untouchable people. They have difficulty getting educated, and the other part is Buddhist, and it's a very interesting country. It's actually, people probably don't know this, but they have a communist government in Nepal. It's actually the Maoists, after a long civil war, the Maoists won the civil war, and it's a Maoist government. but it's not particularly isolated or anything. The politics in Nepal are fascinating. This is another thing we do. We help widows and single mothers in Kathmandu by buying them a vegetable cart. That's a $300 vegetable cart. The cart is actually about $250, and then we buy her some vegetables. And she has a business. It's a mobile business. This woman is actually 60 years old, so I hope she doesn't have to do this for too long. But we've been doing this a lot. We buy these particular carts. We actually have been working in Europe. I had to think for a while, like, if we want to work in Europe, what's the poorest group we could work with? And we decided it was Romani people, also known as gypsies. So we work with Romani people in Kosovo, Serbia, North Macedonia, and Albania. This particular project was, we bought goats. These goats cost about $120 each. Milk goats, the goats used for milk. Let's see. And this is a goose project. I think the geese cost about $25 each. They don't eat the goose, they eat the eggs. Okay. We only have a few pictures of that. Okay, now we're in Pakistan. We have not been able to do a lot of projects in Pakistan. This is a single mother, and we gave her money for a street stall selling food on the street project. Let's see. And the next one, this is another popsicle project. This is a single mother with 3 kids, and we gave her money to start up. We would love to work in Pakistan more. It's going to be one of my questions for this group is, if you have any contacts anywhere, let me know. Sometimes our contacts disappear, more so in Pakistan than any other country. Like I'll be like emailing with somebody in Pakistan, and he'll be like, I'm a closeted atheist, but you know, I'd love to work with you. And then he'll disappear. I'll never hear from him again. So I don't know what happens. It could be the worst. I just don't know. Okay, next is, we're almost done. This is Sudan. We're really happy to work in Sudan. Sudan is another country with really interesting politics. And it has a lot of refugees because of wars in South Sudan and Darfur. The main people we've been funding there are refugee widow single mothers. And we give them money to start these tea and coffee businesses in the street. Let's see what's next. Same thing here, tea and coffee business in the street. Next is, yes, that's the same one. This woman is from, I think she's from South Sudan. Okay, and next is, same thing, tea and coffee. Okay, and the next one, this is, I finally, I said, because I can only do certain projects for so long before the donors get bored. So these are orphan boys, and they're starting an egg project. So that's a change, and we're going to be doing different things. I think I might be close to the last slide. Okay, we have also done projects. I ended up adding some slides, so some of this isn't true. We've also done projects in Zambia, South Africa, Rwanda, Haiti, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Alaska, Appalachia, Turkey. We've done a lot of projects in Turkey, Sri Lanka, and Morocco. Future projects will be in Palestine, I hope. I'm trying to get that together. Okay, and the last slide is thank you. And that's our website. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. That's really, really fascinating. Open it up for questions. Let's see, are there any questions in the chat?
Yes.
Are the sanitary pads the kind you wash and reuse? Otherwise, you'd probably have to keep supplying them with more, like the kinds of disposable ones that we buy here.
Yeah, actually, that's a really great question. We have provided all kinds of sanitary pads. It actually started off, there was some kind of, there were various organizations would give us sanitary pads, and one of our directors goes to Uganda 3 times a year, and he would actually take boxes of sanitary pads over there. These are the use them once kind. And that, as you know, that doesn't work. So, but there is there are some sanitary pads made in Uganda called AfriPads. So we switched to getting the AfriPads. These are washable and reusable. sanitary pads. So that was like the second phase was, yes, buying washable and reusable. Now the third phase, which is what we do mostly now, is we provide money to make your own sanitary pad. That really just means buying a $125 sewing machine and a bunch of fabric. And then they can make their own sanitary pads. And then this way they get a sewing machine out of it. They learn sewing skills, and they can make extra sanitary pads so that they can sell them to their community and make some money. So that's the latest we're doing, and we're doing this a lot in Nepal still. A lot of it's pretty amazing. I had no idea that sanitary pads were this desperately needed in the developing world.
There are groups of people here that are making those sanitary pads. I've seen them at the Galita Community Center. A bunch of women sewing them.
Yeah.
I don't know what group it is.
Yeah. Well, I think they've always been around. I think they were a kind of a hippie thing for all during the 60s or something. And there's people, you can find them on the internet. You can find people that make washable sanitary pads.
Yeah, I heard that before the disposable kind, that's what women used and where the expression "on the rag" came from. So
yeah,
that's what I've heard. Yeah,
that makes sense. I've had other offers like to send over sponges and to send over cups and stuff like that, but we haven't done any of that. We're just, everybody wants the pads.
Okay,
Yeah.
We have another question here. What's the purpose of the crickets? Oh, I think you said it was for food supplement, or
they eat the crickets. Crickets are really high in protein, higher than beef, and they multiply really quickly. I didn't have a slide. Africans are not as adverse to eating bugs as we are. I have a slide that I didn't show, which is we did a project in Zimbabwe where this woman sells dried caterpillars. That's her job. So that the cricket farm is just makes crickets and crickets.
Yeah, I was at a documentary at the Santa Barbara Film Festival a couple of years ago about eating crickets, and they passed crickets out for all of us to eat, like in different bars, and then a little bag of them, and it's if we get over kind of the thought in our mind, they weren't bad. It was
I've eaten them ground up in buckwheat pancakes. They're okay. What I've eaten a lot, I've been to Uganda 3 times. The food isn't spectacular, but the best food in Uganda is the grasshoppers. And so I've gone with my brother twice, and we always try to go now during grasshopper season, because there's 2 grasshopper seasons. And what they do is they basically collect all these grasshoppers. It's free food. They come on in like locusts, and they cook them up with oil and salt, and they're absolutely delicious. So.
All right, we'll have to try that at an upcoming picnic. And then there's another question about, are you doing anything in the area of family planning? Any projects in the family planning area?
When we had the clinics, we would give out free condoms when we had the clinics, but now we only have one clinic operating, the one operated by Atheist Community of San Jose. So they may or may not be handing out free condoms. The clinics got to be a problem. It's kind of complicated to explain, but what happens is we were providing free condoms, and then people would just come up and pick up condoms, and they wouldn't even actually use them. They would just sell them. So we would just run out of condoms, and they wouldn't, somebody's using them somewhere, but people are using them as like, just for exchange. So we couldn't keep giving them out. Just by simply being in Africa as humanists, we support women's rights, and we support reproductive rights. So this is different than the Christians there and the Muslims. So just by being there, we are supporting reproductive rights. Yes.
Yeah,
And
I have a question about how you select your projects. I've been on one trip to Africa with a charitable organization. And one thing that they had made clear and distinguished is that sometimes there's these organizations who come in, oh, you poor Africans, we really need to help you. We know what you need. And they'll do all these kinds of things. And then the projects lay abandoned because it really wasn't the idea of the people on the ground in terms of what they needed and what they were committed to. So how do you respond to that thought? How do you pick your projects?
Well, it's a little bit of what we want to do and what they want to do. What I generally say is I want you to send me a bunch of your ideas first, okay? And then they send me their ideas, and I look at these ideas and I go, I can only really fund what I know I can get money for, right? This has to do with how our organization runs. Our organization, half of our funding comes from about 6 big funders who donate between $6,000 and $10,000 a year, right? And some of them, and all of them, I show projects to them first. Because if I can get any one of them to pay for the $300 project, it's a go. But if somebody sends me a project idea and none of those 6 big funders want to fund it, then I have to go to the small donors, and I may or may not be able to raise all the money then. But to answer your question, I kind of know now like what the funders want to fund and what they don't want to fund. I have to say things, and it's unfortunate sometimes because a lot of people, a lot of Africans just want money for a basket making, right? But my donors are burned out on funding basket making, right? They're just tired of it. I have a lot of funders who don't want to fund pigs or goats anymore because goats are bad for the environment, right? So we have trouble funding those. But I never give anybody money to do a project if they don't want to do the project. And we have a really wide variety of different projects that people do. There's a lot of, there's like yogurt and tofu and vanilla beans and crops I've never heard of, cowpeas, various kinds of things. So, but I have to keep in mind, no matter how much they want the project, if I can't raise money for it, I just can't promise that we can fund it because I can't get the money with that.
Yeah, when I was in graduate school in business, I was studying nonprofits and trying to lay out, for-profit corporation versus a not-for-profit corporation and how do they match up. And it turns out the way we looked at it was that a nonprofit, what your product is the projects that you do, and who your customers are your donor base. And I always had it that maybe the people that you were helping were like your clients, but not really. It's, what are you providing to the people who fund you and their satisfaction in the products or the kinds of projects that you're doing, that kind of thing. It was kind of having to think about things in a different way.
Well, I do have a lot of flexibility because I have 2 donors who don't care what I fund. So I could always say, yeah, I got money for that. I'm going to spend this. But I'm still sensitive about it because they might say they don't care, but I can't just give all their money, I try to make them happy with the projects that I fund. Yeah.
What you provide are the connections into all of these regions and what the needs are. Yeah.
Yes.
Let's see, Robert, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. This is all amazing, and I never heard of this before. How are you doing outreach to get new donors? I'd love to be a donor, but I'd also love to get more people to be donors. How are you advertising this?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that when I decided to start the world's first atheist orphanage, I had a friend then who was a journalist for called Motherboard Vice, and he was kind of a wheeler dealer. Anyway, he goes, when you start that orphanage, I will do it on a GoFundMe, and I will announce the launch of the GoFundMe in a newspaper article. So, and that worked out really well. I think we made $6,000 the first day and about $30,000 in the first 3 or 4 months. And eventually we made like $55,000 just for this one project. But we compiled an email list from that one GoFundMe that we've been like using ever since. And I think the reality of my funding base is something like 30 people. That's about it. You know, I have about 6 people that give between 6 and 10,000 a year, and another 25 who give between 20 and 150 a month. Yeah.
Well, I mean, have you considered doing an ad like in the Humanist magazine or Skeptical Inquirer, that kind of thing?
I don't think I've ever done an ad. What we have is I encourage all the board members to mention it whenever they give like a public talk like this, you know. And some of our board members are also journalists. Like have you ever heard of the Friendly Atheist? You've heard of him? Yeah, he just ran an article for us. He just ran a pitch for us for a. So you know, we made like $200 or $300 off of that particular pitch. Running an ad, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there must be tens or hundreds of thousands of people who would want to be a member. I mean, is this a membership organization?
We don't have a membership. No, we don't have that. I mean, it's pretty easy. Anybody can send me their email. Please send me all your email. If you send me your email address, I'll put you on the mailing list, and then you'll get.
Okay, because like I'm gonna write this up for my column. I usually get about 1,000 to 2,000 hits for my article. So, I mean, I guess I'll just be putting your website. Is that it?
Yeah, you can put the website on. That would be great. Yeah, or we'll talk. You know.
Okay, but I mean, I really think that at the very least, do you know The Nation magazine? It's the oldest magazine in the U.S. Goes back to the
I know The Nation. Yeah, The Nation
goes back to the time of the Civil War. I mean, just a small ad there, you probably get thousands of.
That would be great. Yeah.
Sounds like you guys should talk. Yeah, with your ideas.
That would be good. Yeah, I don't have a marketing background. I'm just like doing what.
Sorry, my degree is in physics.
Are there any other questions? Oh, Meredith, you have a question?
Yes. You have something. You said something about how you can only fund projects for so long because your donors get tired of them. What happens to them after that? After your donors get tired of them?
Well, I mean, this is how we raise money. I send out a newsletter once a month, and I usually put 6 or 8 projects in the newsletter, and I say, this is what we're trying to raise money for, and those projects can raise between $0 and $1,000 depending on how much interest there is. So I keep careful track of what people want to fund, and if I find out that something is just not getting any funding, I don't offer it month after month, because I have to worry that people are going to go, none of these projects I like anymore. I'm not even going to read the newsletter, right? So I spend time trying to come up with projects like a new country every couple of months and that kind of thing, just trying to keep people so that they want to read about the projects and want to be interested in. The most surprising thing I found in our donors is, you probably noticed that we're both humanist and humanitarian, right? That sometimes we fund humanist things like an atheist podcast, and sometimes we fund just something humanitarian, like a widow with some children wants to sell tea and coffee, right? And I mean, right now I generally have a much harder time raising money for the humanist projects, like something like a humanist library or a humanist podcast or something like that. So I don't know. I mean, honestly, my average donor is probably a 55-year-old woman from Canada who's just a really nice person and likes to donate $150 a month without even getting a tax deductible receipt. So that's who we get funding from. I'm amazed at how much money we get internationally. Probably half our funding is from people who don't get the tax write-off.
I assume you are a 501(c)(3).
Yeah. So yeah.
I'm sorry. My real question is: some of the projects clearly are sustainable. Once you get them started, people can keep going. You know, it's the projects that don't seem to be that way, or that still require financial input to keep going. That particularly the ones that are really humanitarian, the ones where people are really dependent, that concern me if you're providing support and then it dries up.
No, it's true. And I have all kinds of different funders who like to fund all kinds of different things. Like one funder, he just funds children's education. So I try to always have something for him to fund. It's amazing how people will keep funding orphans. We've been funding orphans in multiple countries for years and years, and orphans always get funded. But I must say, people are a little tired of funding the widows. We've been funding widows for months now, and it seems like the money is slowing down for that. And some people only fund sustainable projects. They just really like that Philippine one where we buy bulk rice. They love that. I had somebody fund the entire thing, and and then there's other projects, like you say, that they're never going to be sustained. There's nothing sustainable about them, like buying bags of medicine for elderly homeless people on the streets of Mumbai. There's nothing sustainable. There's nothing we can do to support those people long term. But I still get funding for that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Robert, I don't know, your hand's raised still. Go ahead. Oh,
yeah. I had another question. Back in the 80s, when Reagan was torturing and murdering people in Central America, I was part of a volunteer project of engineers in Nicaragua called Technica. And what they did was they had an office in Nicaragua where local organizations could come there, and people like me would submit our resumes, and then they could come to the office, and then they could pick us and say, oh, I could use you to do such and so. I'm just wondering if that's another way to expand your model. It doesn't necessarily literally have to be that, but I just mean, do you have something like that where people on the ground in those countries can initiate what they need?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have a horror story to tell on that. We did send somebody contacted me and said he wanted to be a volunteer in Uganda, and I said okay, but I didn't really vet him that carefully, and he went there, and he got an 18-year-old girl pregnant, and he kept getting in kind of fights with the villagers. He was deeply opposed to corporal punishment, which is something we are. So he would intervene if he saw like a parent like spanking their kid. So he became very hated, and it turned out he was bipolar, and I completely lost touch with him. This isn't really answering your question. My goal in the next couple of years is to actually spend more time over there myself. It's just something that I need to do. We do have Dan Beaton in the UK, who is going to go to Africa probably at least 4 times a year. So that is great for us because that's a cheaper flight, He's married to a Kenyan woman himself, so he enjoys going to Kenya, but he also loves going to Ghana, Nigeria, and Uganda. So he's going to be, and we do have another guy, a guy named Roger Hansen, who lives in Utah, and he goes to Uganda and Ethiopia about 3 times a year. So we do have inspections in place, some inspections, but I should go myself more often. My next trips planned are a big trip. We're trying to get everybody to go to Nepal. A lot of the donors to go to Nepal soon.
Great.
Yeah. I had
All
a
right.
question for the group. If anybody can I ask a question? Well, I always like to find out what people like to fund. So I have 2. Yeah. So I'm just curious in this group, like we're thinking of trying to fund atheists in Palestine. Does that appeal to people if we can find atheists in Palestine? And that sounds good. You like that idea? I'm working hard on that. And the other group we're trying to fund is there's a lot of atheist refugees that are in Greece. They're pretty much Syrian atheists that ended up in Greece. So we're trying to fund that group. Does that sound appealing? Sounds okay? Good.
Yeah, I think sometimes we have to understand like the background of it, and is it strategic? I mean, when you were talking about the orphans who were dropped off at the madrasas that become Boko Haram, I'm like, holy cow, we need to help those kids, because otherwise they're getting sucked into this other life that creates all these other downstream problems. So for me, kind of those high leverage things, like let's nip it in the bud kind of a thing. So if the Syrian Greek thing is, you know, if it's a high leverage thing, that's what appeals to me personally. Thank you. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so it may be the way that you talk about it or explain it, and don't take for granted that we know what's going on in these places. Need to be, the background may have to be shared. Yeah. Because we've been pretty consumed, I think, with the last couple of years of what's going on in our country. So we may have lost track, some of us, not saying, you know, of what's going on in other places. What about the rest of you? What your thoughts about what projects you like to fund, or any other thoughts about that?
We tried to fund secular humanists in Appalachia, and I couldn't find any. It was terrible. Appalachia is the hardest place in the world for us to work in.
That you couldn't find any secular humanists in Appalachia, or you couldn't find anybody willing to fund them?
No, I couldn't find anyone to fund.
Oh,
it was very hard. Yeah. No, we have people that want to fund in Appalachia, but I just can't find it. It's a very Christian place. That's all. Thank you. Yeah.
Again, thank you so much for sharing this with us. I mean, it's really very inspiring, and I'm so grateful that we've got humanists out there making this kind of a difference in the world. So thanks for that. All right, couple of announcements. Board election ballots were sent to all of our members by email. And because the new term starts July 1st, we've had several new people step up saying they're willing to be on the board. Thank you for that. None of the elections are contested. So you can just forward that email with your votes to our secretary, outgoing secretary, Diane Crone. I also wanted as a reminder that our Humanist Society is co-sponsoring a scholarship with the Secular Student Alliance for 2 deserving secular student activists. And what's going to happen is they're going to send us essays through Secular Student Alliance, and we get to pick who the winners are. So if you're interested in reading essays by student activists and deciding who would get these scholarships, please let me know, and we'll make sure you get some of these essays. We're also thinking that this may be a feeder stream to once they graduate, to have them contribute their leadership to our organization. Also wanted to mention that we've been talking about that we co-sponsored this May Day for Humanity. The event last week raised $25,000 for secular homeless shelters and food banks here in the US. And thank everybody for their support. Those of you who attended the event, it was a lot of fun, very entertaining. And those of you that contributed items for the online auction. Also wanted to remind everyone that I hope some of you are reading this book. This is how it always is, it's a novel, very well written novel about a family raising a transgender child. We hope to finish reading the book, and then on Saturday, June 5th at 3 p.m. on this Zoom link, Marian Shapiro will lead us in discussing the book. She has a background as being a retired educator in human sexuality issues, make us all more aware of what is this transgender thing all about. Books available online, local libraries, and bookstores. And as Marian and I were talking about this, I thought, well, with June being Gay Pride Month, maybe our June speaker could be talking to us about the topic of gender, how things have changed since we were kids. So on Saturday, June 19th, that's going to be our topic. Next month, one of Marian's former colleagues, Dr. Scott McCann, and Marian will be bringing us up to date on what's happening in this world of gender, which sometimes can be kind of confusing. And then another announcement, Meredith McMinn is on the call today, and as you all know, she is an actress, producer, a singer, a voice, a dialect coach. She's previously directed several of our productions, HSSB, where we've done these little stage plays of Steve Allen's Meeting of Minds. She has agreed to lead us in putting on a Zoom play of Inherit the Wind. You may have seen this movie. It's from 1960 with Spencer Tracy and Frederick March, Gene Kelly, and the original Darren Stevens and Harry Morgan. So what we're going to do is we're each going to read a part, and we're going to record it in advance on Zoom and edit it together, and then that's going to be our meeting, is hearing us, our group, do a reading of Inherit the Wind. It is memorizing lines will not be required. Yeah, so it's going to be the November meeting where we're going to play it. There will be some rehearsals in advance, but we are going to record it and edit it together and then play that for our November meeting this year. But we're wanting people to get involved now because we need time to rehearse and record. There's a number of characters, 6 leading characters, 24 secondary and minor characters, opportunity for experienced people, novice people. You can read for multiple parts. All genders and ethnicities are welcome. And if you're interested in participating, contact Nan or Meredith for that. And that's it. Thank you so much for attending. Appreciate all of your participation and support, and look forward to seeing you next month.